Matt Campbell is definitely not messing around here. He's targeting D'Anton Lynn to be the next defensive coordinator at Penn State. And there's some momentum here.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State football. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, a superstar edge defender says he's out. He's done. He's going into the portal. We'll talk about what Penn State is losing in superstar true freshman Chaz Coleman and where he's headed next. But a familiar name actually re-enters the transfer portal. Beau Pribula. Could he return to Penn State? Why? There might be some momentum there. But Penn State, Matt Campbell, going after a huge name to be the next defensive coordinator. It seemed like all things were aligning with the former Iowa State defensive coordinator just to take over the same role. But no, Penn State, it has officially been reported that D'Anton Lynn is the primary target of Penn State's defensive coordinator search. So Matt Campbell going huge to start here. This would be an exceptional hire. There are some questions here, though, so we're going to address all of that. Will this happen? Why there's actual momentum here? What Penn State would be getting? Also, what drawbacks are there here? Because there are actually some parallels between Lynn and Jim Knowles that I want to point out. A friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Also, I appreciate everyone bearing with me as we are still a little bit under the weather. So I thank you for all of your grace in today's show. But the news that this is not just a message board rumor anymore, that Matt Campbell is targeting D'Anton Lynn. This would be extremely interesting to me because before Penn State ended up getting Jim Knowles last season, I know that hindsight's 2020, it didn't work out. He's off to Tennessee, all of that jazz. But Lynn was one of the primary targets last offseason, and it didn't really seem like there was that much traction. Lynn ended up getting, because it didn't get to this point where now he's the primary target. What I'm getting at is interesting that Lynn said no to James Franklin, and it seemed like not too much of an issue. Ends up getting a raise at USC. Oh, well, the family, we want to stay out here in Southern California. To now where there's legitimate concern on the USC side to where people are saying USC might be in the market for a new defensive coordinator, or we need to be targeting, Texas just fired their defensive coordinator. We should be targeting him. So basically, they're starting to formulate plans to have a contingency plan in place with the expectation that Lynn is gone. Now, nothing's a guarantee, of course, right? But it is not speculation that Penn State is targeting D'Anton Lynn and that there is interest. My counterpart, Mark Culkin over at Locked On USC, one of his episode going into yesterday was that USC very well might be looking for a new defensive coordinator because it is oddly convenient that Lynn had canceled post-practice availability not once, not twice, but for the remainder of this week. That is officially tangible. And then you have this report come out from On3, from 24/7, saying that, yes, Penn State is targeting D'Anton Lynn to be the next defensive coordinator here. So he's the leader at this point. But apparently there's a holdup. Okay, so what's the holdup? Okay, this is a bit of a rumor, which I don't buy. Okay, so the rumor is that Penn State doesn't have the money to buy him out of his contract. That's the holdup, is that Penn State can't afford the buyout. I find that funny. I actually laugh at that because Penn State had no issues, had no qualms with the idea of potentially paying James Franklin over $50 million for a buyout. They're going to pay Jim Knowles' buyout. They're going to pay Andy Kotelnicki's buyout. But they can't afford to pay whatever the agreement is for D'Anton Lynn. So, okay, maybe the receipts add up, and it's after you pay Kotelnicki, after you pay Jim Knowles, after you pay Franklin his negotiated buyout, that, yeah, the credit card is maxed out here. But again, if you fired Franklin in the middle of the season and you were prepared for the possibility that you were going to pay upwards of $50 million, or at least not to the extent of where it was negotiated down to under $10 million, bottom line is, I don't think Penn State's hurting for money. What I think Penn State is doing is being strategic with its money. Because on the other side of things, USC, apparently they're good to let him go. That they might not even want a buyout of any sort. So I think Penn State is biding its time. And would you rather take D'Anton Lynn and pay that buyout to USC, pay an unnecessary amount of money in millions of dollars to get D'Anton Lynn, or would you rather wait out USC and just have D'Anton Lynn and not have to pay the millions of dollars to USC? So you see my point here is that Penn State might be being strategic here by just waiting out the situation so that they don't have to pay millions of dollars that they don't have to. The next part of this is that I do find it interesting that some people are saying, well, D'Anton Lynn, USC doesn't really want him. They want to move on. They're willing to let him walk. He's been entertaining Penn State for the past couple of seasons. And I don't know that to be true, because D'Anton Lynn told them no pretty swiftly last offseason. Okay. I'm glad that Penn State's been persistent, because if you want anybody to be your next defensive coordinator, it's D'Anton Lynn. D'Anton Lynn is one of the best young defensive minds in all of college football right now. He's already well-traveled in the NFL. He's a Penn State alum. He's been viewed as one of those rising stars in college football for quite some time now. What he was able to do at USC in just a quick amount of time. So it's his ability to rebuild defenses in such a short amount of time, which is where the parallel for Jim Knowles comes in. So Lynn's system isn't complicated. It's not there is an adjustment, right? There's any adjustment to one system to another, but it's not overly complicated like Jim Knowles. However, there is that adjustment period that I want to point out. And his signature is kind of similar to Knowles's, where, okay, year one, we're going to chip away and make this defense significantly better than what it was a season ago. It's not exactly an instant plug and play. Well, at least at UCLA it was, but at USC, and I think that's where the frustration comes from, is that USC fans, USC pundits don't believe that they were getting the best results from Lynn. But there was still significant progress made over his time, that after each season, you were chipping away. I mean, USC, that was one of the worst defenses in all of college football. Whereas Jim Knowles, when he took over Ohio State, okay, he progressively made it better. It went from top 30 to top 10 to number 1 overall, right? Back-to-back top 5 defenses. But then with D'Anton Lynn, he's taking over the worst defense in all of college football with USC, and then he makes it a top 50 group, and then he makes it an even better group after that. But it's the minimal progression there that I think that USC fans and USC people that follow the team were frustrated that, oh, we didn't see enough progress and into that second season. So they're saying, okay, well, certainly we can do better, right? Well, he transformed UCLA. That's difficult to do. UCLA's defense was top 10 when he was there. That was difficult to do. And then he rebuilt a USC defense that was bottom 10 in the nation to a respectable group that just didn't perform enough. I think the timing's interesting. If Lynn were to leave USC on the heels of a number 1 recruiting class, which is why I'm not all in on saying this move is guaranteed to happen, I want to wait and see about this. This is a great move for Penn State. He's a Penn State alum. His defense, it's simple. It's an attacking style defense. So it would kind of have the elements of Manny Diaz that I think a lot of fans are going to find refreshing to hear. That it's this attacking NFL style. It doesn't force it. What it does is he wants to simplify an attack and have fewer players thinking and more of them just react. And so that they react accordingly. They don't sit and process and they hesitate. They just go. It's that see ball, get ball mentality. So you see why Penn State's going in this direction. But this hire would be the hire. Penn State needs to go with John Haycock for a year or two. That's a great contingency plan, but I don't even know that that's a possibility since he was contemplating retirement. But if you can get D'Anton Lynn away from USC, you get him away from a now Big Ten rival, right? A Big Ten conference foe. I know Penn State's unrivaled, but you get what I mean. A team that's actually in the Big Ten. He has NFL roots. He would come back to a place that he graduated from that is near and dear to his heart. You get one of the innovative minds in all of college football to go along with this all-star caliber staff. This move would be one of the best possible for Matt Campbell to start his tenure. All right, now let's transition to the transfer portal. Beau Pribula is back in the portal. He just started at Missouri. Why would he want to leave? Well, he's already being connected to Penn State. We're going to talk about if that move would happen coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Holidays show up faster than we expect, and you're still putting together gifts, last-minute decor, or getting your home ready for guests. Wayfair has you covered. Whether you need a quick room refresh, new bedding, or those final seasonal touches, Wayfair makes it easy to get what you need fast. Wayfair truly is your one-stop shop for everything home, with decor, furniture, kitchen essentials, and gifts for every style and every budget, all delivered quickly and easily. Their selection's huge. So you have bedding, you have decor, you have kitchen gear, you have kids' room updates. You can find everything all in one place with Wayfair. It's so easy to shop by style. You'll be able to pick pieces that actually fit your home instead of just guessing. Wayfair items that you order will instantly refresh your space without a big project. And Wayfair is perfect for gifting too. They have guides, tons of options, and something for everyone on any budget. No massive delivery fees, which means no stress. Get last-minute hosting essentials, gifts for all your loved ones, and decor to celebrate the holidays for way less. Head over to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That is WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. You have live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. And you can bet on more than just NFL football, college football as well. Lines are available for Penn State and Clemson in their upcoming bowl game. The Nittany Lions are 3.5-point underdogs against the Tigers, plus 128 on the money line, minus 154 if you're thinking Clemson. The total is set at 48.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. That's FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network out there. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Nittany Lions with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonnittanylions.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, it's never too early for some activity in the transfer portal, especially when it relates to Penn State. Later on, we're going to talk about that star defensive end, Chaz Coleman, who is set to enter the portal, but someone that Penn State is familiar with is also re-entering the transfer portal. And could Penn State, there's a rumor going around that Penn State is significantly interested in the possibility of reuniting with quarterback Beau Pribula. So let's talk about that. Beau Pribula, Missouri quarterback, is entering the portal. Why is he doing that? And is there steam here to Penn State? Also going to talk about, does it make sense for Penn State? Why would this be the case? Why would they want Pribula back in year one with Matt Campbell? So yes, it's a fit. But let's begin with Beau Pribula's decision to enter the portal. So I had heard a fringe rumor that this was possibly a situation. Missouri's offensive coordinator had left. There were some rumblings that Penn State, but nothing confirmed. This was a lot of jargon, and it still kind of is to an extent. But now that Pribula is actually in the transfer portal, okay, there's clearly something here. Why is he in the portal when he was going to start again at Missouri? And maybe is that the case? Maybe that's not the case. Matt Zollers, former five-star quarterback out of high school, Pennsylvania native, Penn State. The everydayers on this channel know how much we covered Zollers and the recruitment and how he never ended up at Penn State to begin with. But when Beau Pribula was injured, Zollers came in. Dude played pretty well. So did Pribula potentially lose his starting spot there? The rumor now is that, well, the reason he's in the portal is because there is a hefty NIL offer proposed by Penn State. Okay, so this is where the real dialogue picks up. Once again, these rumors, they're interesting because why is Penn State in the market for a quarterback when they already have a quarterback, when they already have a starting quarterback? I have nothing against Penn State bringing Beau Pribula back if they didn't have a quarterback. But if it's between 1 year of Beau Pribula and 3 years of Ethan Grunkemeyer, I'm taking 3 years of Ethan Grunkemeyer. But based on the way that the rumors are swirling, other people that follow and cover Penn State, the way this conversation, this dialogue continues to go, we're basically under the assumption that Ethan Grunkemeyer is not going to be a QB at Penn State, that he's going to go somewhere else. And again, I'm reading the writing on the wall here. This isn't any inside information. This is strictly a hunch. But then you listen to his press conference leading up to the bowl game itself against Clemson, and Grunkemeyer seemed again. I'm trying to read what he's saying, trying to read the answer within the answer, because he was asked about his future, and he said, I've met with Coach Campbell and I'm excited about the future. A lot of those vague statements, right? You take those PR classes, right? So that you give the perfect answer. But he did tense up a little bit, and he seemed kind of passive. He didn't seem too really thrilled. And at one moment you could actually see the change in his tone. You could see the shift in his emotion, which leads me to believe that, okay, something's not right here, that his future at Penn State is a little cloudy here, whether that's Ethan's decision or Matt Campbell's decision. Again, this is purely speculation. It's what I'm trying to analyze, since there's not an official report that, oh, Penn State's ready to move on from Ethan Grunkemeyer. And maybe that's totally off the wall. And maybe that's why Ethan doesn't seem too thrilled about it, because there are all these other rumors. Beau Pribula allegedly offered $2 to $3 million by Penn State. That's not fun. That's not fun if you're the starting quarterback, you're preparing for a game. And if you're Grunkemeyer, you got to deal with that you might be replaced, or there are rumors that your team's trying to replace you, and you got a new coach. You're James Franklin. He committed to James Franklin. A lot of these players are James Franklin players. So just understand that. Just know that they do have an allegiance to the former coach here. But all in all, in this situation, my expectation is that Ethan Grunkemeyer will not be, that is a prediction, that he will not be the starting quarterback of the future for Penn State, just because of the way this discourse has gone and the assessment here. Again, I heard that rumor for a little bit. Now we see Pribula actually in the portal. There is definitely interest from Penn State. There would be interest from Penn State, if they're not going to have Ethan Grunkemeyer for their long-term plans, to bring in somebody like Beau Pribula, which I would be content with. If Ethan Grunkemeyer is not in the picture, Beau Pribula is absolutely a guy that you want for a season. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. When he was healthy, when he was able to lead Missouri's offense to a full capacity, he took that step forward that I was anticipating. When you actually built the system around him and you put him in positions to succeed, and you didn't bring him in as a change of pace quarterback, your gadget play QB in an Andy Kotelnicki system, look at what happens when you give Beau Pribula the full reign of the offense. Give me that at Penn State. Pribula is a Pennsylvania guy. The same thing that I'm going to talk about with Chaz Coleman here and him being linked to Ohio State and everything, him being an Ohio native, this applies to Beau Pribula with him being a Pennsylvania native. It would be a homecoming for him. It would be the feel-good story that everybody would want. Final season for Beau Pribula, first year with Matt Campbell. There are a lot of reasons to like this move. I'm good with it on the condition that Ethan Grunkemeyer were not to be in the fold. And I will state again that my preference is Ethan Grunkemeyer for 3 years because I think he is the better player long-term over 1 year of Beau Pribula. I don't think you sacrifice 3 years of Ethan Grunkemeyer for 1 year rental of Beau Pribula. That's just the fact of the matter. I like longevity in this sport because you don't see it very often. Now, if Beau Pribula ends up going somewhere else because he was linked to Iowa once upon a time, they're going to need a quarterback again. Unless I'm mistaken, and Mark Gronowski has another year, right? Penn State could obviously go with Rocco Becht of Iowa State if he happens to enter the transfer portal. So the former, I shouldn't say former, Iowa State quarterback. I'm not trying to assume anything. I'm just misspoken here. But the idea is that a lot of Iowa State players are going to enter the portal and follow Matt Campbell over to Penn State, right? That's the assumption, but it's not a guarantee. I do like the idea of that, though, because if you get Rocco Becht, you might even get the backup QB there as well with Alex Mansky, and then you build out a quarterback depth chart. So Penn State's quarterback situation is just really up in the air, and it might get a reset here. You have Grunkemeyer, who I would like Penn State to build around. I would like them to go get a veteran quarterback that backs him up, something like that, a journeyman QB, because you can do that in college football nowadays, actually. I think you can do that with Grunkemeyer, but it's going to be tough to convince somebody and say, hey, you're the guarantee QB too. We have our starter. I don't blame Matt Campbell for wanting to reset the room, going and getting a 1 year player with Rocco Becht and Beau Pribula, and then passing the baton over to potentially 1 or 2 quarterbacks in a QB battle and allow those other guys to sit and develop and build out the depth chart. I've said that's the best option for Penn State. If you want to build out the QB room, if you don't get that veteran backup with Grunkemeyer, because right now the depth chart is very uncertain. You have Jackson Smolik, who I failed to mention in a previous episode. He's still there, but I anticipate that, hey, he probably believes that he can start somewhere else. I assume he's going to transfer out. You have Beckham Kritza, who's not a Matt Campbell guy. Does he stay? Does he go with Penn State getting not 1, but 2 class of 2026 quarterback commits? It's going to be interesting. But it seems like Matt Campbell's blueprint to follow is getting a 1 year QB at the end of his college tenure and building out the depth chart with guys that, again, Oregon's done it. You get Dylan Gabriel, you get Dante Moore, you let that guy sit behind him. So if that's Rocco Becht, if that's Beau Pribula, then you get that next up-and-coming QB to back him up and be the starter in waiting, but be a solid, serviceable QB2. We'll see how it goes. Now, other transfer portal news. Speaking of the transfer portal, Penn State is set to lose a key player, superstar player, Chaz Coleman. He's most likely going to end up at Ohio State. We're going to talk about this next year, coming up on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, and suddenly the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Rocket Money helps you find subscriptions that you forgot that you were paying for, and helps you clean them up quickly. and you get to see all of your spending on one dashboard. It makes it easier to understand where your money is actually going. You will love how Rocket Money is automatically building budgets based on past spending. It keeps you on track without overthinking it. And you'll have bill alerts, spending notifications that help you catch the small things before they turn into big expenses. Take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, final segment here on Locked On Nittany Lions as we talk about Chaz Coleman announcing his decision to enter the transfer portal. Major loss for Penn State. Ohio State also gets a mulligan. We'll talk about Penn State's defensive line setup and could other players follow him into the transfer portal. So yeah, there's no putting this lightly. Chaz Coleman was going to be the face of the defense next season if he were to return for Penn State. And why I say Ohio State's getting a mulligan is because this is no secret that he's going to be a Buckeye. I would be absolutely shocked if he ends up anywhere else. But how it impacts Penn State, I mean, he was trending to be potentially a first-round pick. He had a lot of similar traits that Abdul Carter had as a third-year college defender, and Coleman was in his first season as a true freshman. So that kind of tells you the caliber, the upside, the potential, the star power that Chaz Coleman had. So I don't like this at all. But it was really expected at this point. But Penn State did make a push. I don't fault Penn State. I don't fault Matt Campbell at all. On 3, Pete Nakos reported that Penn State was prioritizing him and that they made a financial push to try to keep him, but he still felt the need to enter the transfer portal. So that is why I say Ohio State gets a mulligan here, because Ohio State let him leave. Chaz Coleman is from the state of Ohio. His dream was probably to go to Ohio State. So he's an Ohio native. He wanted to play for the Buckeyes. Ohio State severely misevaluated him. They liked him, don't get me wrong, but clearly they didn't push for him enough at the time. So they essentially get a mulligan because they didn't evaluate him properly coming out of high school. Penn State did, and you saw it instantly. So they're going to get a really talented player because he wants to be closer to home. He wants to play for Ohio State. They can be financially competitive. This isn't a matter of if, this is a matter of when. Fortunately for Penn State, they never have to face Chaz Coleman. And that's not something that I particularly like myself. I would like to see Penn State play Ohio State sooner rather than later. But by the time Chaz Coleman is finished with college football, he'll be on his way to the NFL draft if everything goes accordingly, right? That's how highly I think of Chaz Coleman, is that this guy is going to be 3 years and finished. He'll transfer to Ohio State. He'll play 2 more seasons, and he'll be on a fast track to the NFL and be a first-round pick, might even be a top 10 pick. I do not say this lightly. This kid played very minimal defensive end in high school. He was a dual sport athlete, and he enrolled late at Penn State, and the switch flipped immediately for him. That's a testament to Chaz Coleman. That's also a testament to Deion Barnes for tapping into that potential so early on. He's just a naturally gifted athlete, pass rusher, defender. So Ohio State is going to get the benefits of all of that. Penn State most likely will never face him unless it's in the postseason. So I guess I should preface that it won't be a regular season meeting. It would potentially be in a Big Ten championship or the college football playoff if we get to that point over the next 2 years. So good for Ohio State, right? No bitterness over here. But how about the defensive line room overall? Because that now becomes the focal point here. Okay, so Chaz Coleman, he's moving on. So be it. But we also have to explain the impact of this. So he was going to be the face of your defense next season. You know, we're talking about D'Anton Lynn in this episode. That is somebody that you want to build around as your star pass rusher, as your premier defensive end. where that's been the case for Penn State. They've had Chop Robinson, they've had Abdul Carter. They've always had that face of the defense be that guy off the edge. And now you're losing that. So you turn to, okay, Ivan Kamaju, is he going to transfer? Now, I don't have any indicators as far as what is Kamaju going to do? What is somebody like Daniel Jennings going to do, who is a high upside defensive prospect? We know that Jackson Ford committed to the class of 2026. And we're talking about defensive ends here primarily. There's Cortez Harris. So Max Granville, who missed the entirety of this season with a long-term injury. Would he return? Right. He's from the state of Texas. He was strongly considering Oklahoma. If Deion Barnes is expected to be retained on staff, that's going to lessen the damage here of potentially everybody just going into the transfer portal. I do anticipate Jalen Harvey is a name that still has that showed some positive, but not necessarily enough at times. So Malachi Williams too dealt with some injuries here and there. So this is a defensive end room that is still unproven, but with a ton of talent that Deion Barnes was starting to work with as guys were staying healthy. But that's why Chaz Coleman's departure is such a big deal, because you have a lot of unproven talent coming back. What is that going to mean in the first year for Matt Campbell? You're going to be installing a new defense one way or another, whether it's D'Anton Lynn or if they happen to go with John Haycock for a year or two, right? You need as much pass rushing capability and defensive linemen as possible, because that's where battles are won in the trenches. I would be concerned that people are going to transfer out. James Franklin recruited a lot of these players. I know that Deion Barnes was an integral part in these recruitments as well. But I look at someone like Ivan Kamaju, who is from the state of Maryland. I look at Jalen Harvey, same thing, from the state of Maryland originally. They get closer to home, or they get a little more in proximity. I know there's not that much of a difference between Maryland to Virginia Tech versus Maryland to Pennsylvania, but maybe that is something that matters. They have family more so that way, or something in that regard. So, and the James Franklin factor. So I do wonder about that. How much of an impact will Deion Barnes have? I think he will have some, but I do expect some players by proxy just to go into the transfer portal. And again, that's at defensive end. At defensive tackle, remember, you're losing, and where you're losing defensive ends too. Denai Sutton, Zariah Fisher. Then in the middle, Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford. You're losing your entire starting defensive line. So Xavier Gilliam is going to be a priority to retain. Ty Blanding. I would like to think that those guys are going to come back, but nothing's a given. Nothing is a given in this situation. So that has to be your priority when you're installing a new defense like this. When you're going with a new defensive coordinator, it starts up front. And those guys, you're already losing one with Chaz Coleman. You don't want to see this turn into multiple losses where Gilliam, potential starter, Kamaju, potential starter, Daniel Jennings, really good, I think could be that starter. Max Granville, you would love to build around Max. Okay, so you can't build around Chaz Coleman, build around Max Granville and Ivan Kamaju, and Xavier Gilliam, you're off to a much better start. But this could go from not so ideal to bad to worse if you start to lose multiple players like this. So just trying to put a perspective on it. Again, Chaz Coleman, because he's a superstar, he's most likely going to go to a Big Ten foe in Ohio State. It's not great to talk about. It's not great to analyze, but it's the nature of the situation that we're in. Again, Matt Campbell and Penn State did try. You can't fault them for that. Hey, that's where we're going to end things on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate each and every one of you for not only checking out this episode, but bearing with me as we are still a little under the weather and overcoming a cold here. So thank you so much for joining me on this show. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Please leave a like, share it with friends and family, and share this episode with friends and family. And if you're not already, become an everydayer, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And if you need a last-minute holiday gift idea, or someone keeps asking you what you want, make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of the show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through LockedOnNittanyLions.supercast.com. And for those of you who are on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football. Thanks again for tuning in.